Before the age of giant warehouses and online clicks, the 5 and dime was the beating heart of every American town. Today, we're stepping back in time to rediscover the lost empires that defined our childhoods and why they vanished forever. The Pioneer, Woolworth's king of Main Street. If we're talking about the golden age of 5 and dime stores in America, there's only one place to start. It's a name that for over a century became a symbol of every main street across the country. Woolworth's. But before it became a global empire, Woolworth's was just a daring idea. A risky gamble in the mind of a young man named Frank Winfield Woolworth. Let's travel back to 1879. Back then, shopping was a completely different experience. You'd walk into a store, stand behind a high wooden counter, and have to ask the clerk to show you an item. You weren't allowed to touch the goods. You didn't even know the price until you asked. It was formal, but it felt distant. Frank Woolworth changed all of that. He had a revolutionary vision. What if people could actually pick up the items they liked? What if everything in the store cost exactly 5 cents? His first attempt in Utica, New York was a total failure. People actually laughed at him, but Frank didn't give up. He moved to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and on a warm June day in 1879, Woolworth's Great 5-Cent Store officially opened. This time, it wasn't just a store, it was a revolution. Every item was laid out on open tables. You could feel the weight of a glass marble, smell the fresh paper of a notebook, and see the price tag dangling right there. 5 cents. Later, he added a 10-cent line, and the term 5 and dime was officially born. By the early 20th century, Woolworth's spread like wildfire across America. To a child back then with a shiny nickel in their pocket, Woolworth's felt like a fairy tale palace. You probably still remember that feeling, don't you? Stepping through those double doors and being greeted by the smell of roasted peanuts mixed with floor wax. The aisles were a world of wonders. There were bins full of shiny tin toys, colorful spools of thread for mom, and those iconic red and gold signs everywhere. It was the place where you bought your first goldfish, carried home in a little cardboard box with a wire handle. It was where you picked out Christmas ornaments, school supplies, or the prettiest hair ribbons for Sunday church. But Woolworth's wasn't just about what you could buy. It was about how it made you feel. In 1913, Frank Woolworth built the Woolworth Building in New York City, known as the Cathedral of Commerce. At the time, 1913, it was the tallest building in the world, built entirely with the nickels and dimes of ordinary Americans. It was proof of how small changes could build something truly great. And we can't talk about Woolworth's without mentioning its heart, the lunch counter. For millions of Americans, this was the original social network. It was the community's shared kitchen. You'd pick a shiny chrome swivel stool, maybe give it a playful spin before sitting down, and rest your coat on the counter. The air was thick with the aroma of grilled cheese sandwiches, hot coffee, and cherry pie. For just a few cents, you had a real meal. A club sandwich, a scoop of mashed potatoes with gravy, or a frosty milkshake served in a heavy silver mixing cup. It was a place where gentlemen in fedoras sat next to tired moms and teenagers met after school to share a banana split. There was a sense of belonging. You were a customer, but you were also a neighbor. For decades, Woolworth's seemed invincible. It survived the Great Depression and thrived through World War II. By the 1960s, there were thousands of stores worldwide. But then the world began to change. Quiet main streets were replaced by massive suburban malls. The cozy, personal shopping experience was swallowed up by giant, cold discount warehouses. Woolworth's tried to adapt. They opened larger stores and even bought a small shoe company called Kinney Shoes. Little did they know this side business would later become their only lifeline. In the 1970s, they developed a specialty athletic store called Foot Locker, but the red-fronted 5 and dimes we grew up with were struggling. One by one, the lights at the lunch counters went out. The wooden floors that held the footprints of generations were replaced by cold floor tiles. By the 1990s, the battle was over. In 1997, after 117 years of service, Woolworth's closed its last variety stores in the U.S. It was the end of an era. The company officially changed its name to Foot Locker Incorporated in 2001. So, the next time you walk past a Foot Locker in the mall, take a second to look at the floor. Beneath the trendy shoes and neon lights, there lies the soul of a red-fronted store that once sold everything you ever dreamed of for just a dime. Do you remember the very first thing you bought at Woolworth's? Please share your favorite Woolworths memory in the comments below. I can't wait to read your stories. McCrory, the giant and the whirlpool of fate. If Woolworths was the king, then McCrory's was the hard-working builder who provided the backbone for American discount retail. It started in 1882 in Scottdale, Pennsylvania. Imagine a man named John G. McCrory. He wasn't into flashiness, he believed in volume and convenience. In just 3 short years, he grew from one small shop to 5 locations. And that was just the beginning. Here's a fascinating bit of history. Did you know that Sebastian Kress, the man who later created the Kmart empire, was an early investor in McCrory's? That's right, the first lessons of modern retail were learned right in the aisles of McCrory's. McCrory's was the place where you could find everything under one roof. Need a sewing kit to fix your husband's shirt? McCrory's had it. Kids looking for a bag of colorful penny candy after school? McCrory's was ready, from housewares to cosmetics and the first plastic toys. McCrory's was like a magic bag for every American family, and of course, just like its brother Woolworth's, McCrory's had those legendary lunch counters. Remember those afternoons sitting on a swivel stool, holding a cold soda, and watching the world go by through the window? It was an essential part of our lives. But McCrory's history wasn't all roses. In 1933, during the height of the Great Depression, the company faced bankruptcy. But like a phoenix, it rose from the ashes under a new name: McCrory Stores. At its peak, McCrory's owned 1,300 stores nationwide. But then, a strange pattern began. McCrory's became a collector of dying brands. Okay, they bought G.C. Murphy, they took over TG&Y, and they swallowed up J.J. Newberry and Kress. People used to joke, all roads for 5 and dimes lead to McCrory's before they disappear. It was like a graveyard of nostalgia, holding the final names of a passing era. By the 90s, the world was no longer what John G. McCrory had imagined. New giants like Walmart, with their massive parking lots and rock-bottom prices, pulled customers away from downtown. McCrory's sales dried up. In 1992, the company filed for bankruptcy again. They tried to hang on, crawling for another decade by selling off assets. But eventually, the end came. In 2002, the last McCrory stores closed forever. A 120-year empire ended, leaving behind empty storefronts and faded signs. Today, when you walk past old buildings in Pennsylvania or any state across the country, look closely. You might still see the faint trace of the McCrory name on the bricks. It stands as a witness to the rise and fall of an American dream. Did you ever work at a McCrory's when you were young? Or maybe it was where you bought your first Christmas gift for your parents? Share your memories with us. Kress and Company, Art Palaces on Main Street. In the list of vanished 5 and dimes, one name always stands out for its beauty and elegance: S.H. Kress and Company. Samuel Henry Kress opened his first store in Memphis, Tennessee in 1896. But he didn't just want to build a place to sell things, he wanted to build masterpieces. While competitors saved money with plain buildings, Samuel Kress believed that even the poorest people deserved to shop in a space as grand as a palace. If you grew up in a town with a Kress, you know exactly what I mean. They were architectural icons. Samuel Kress even set up his own architecture department within the company. Instead of plain brick blocks, Kress stores were stunning Art Deco works of art. They featured cream-colored terracotta facades, intricate curved patterns, and the name Kress cast in bronze or carved deep into the stone. Step inside and you wouldn't find creaky wooden floors. Instead, there were polished terrazzo floors, soaring columns, and light shimmering from elegant chandeliers. Kress made you feel like a VIP, even if you only had 10 cents in your pocket. Like the others, Kress had candy and lunch counters, but everything seemed to taste a little better there because of the atmosphere. Do you remember the smell of fresh-baked goods wafting through that elegant space? Or the feeling of sitting on high-quality leather stools at the soda fountain? Samuel Kress was a true lover of art. Later in life, he donated thousands of precious artworks to the National Gallery of Art. That love for beauty lived in every aisle of his stores. For Americans back then, shopping at Kress was like visiting a museum where you could actually take something home. At its peak in the 1950s, nearly 200 Kress palaces lit up main streets from New York to California. But the tragedy began when the company was sold to Genesco in 1964. The new owners didn't understand the value of this affordable luxury. They started leaving Main Street for shopping malls. But sadly, the architectural elegance of Kress couldn't survive in the soulless concrete blocks of modern malls. Kress lost its identity. In 1981, what was left of Kress was sold to, yes, you guessed it, McCrory's. And as we learned, McCrory's was the final stop for dreams. The Kress name flickered until 2001 and then vanished from the retail map. However, something miraculous happened. Because the Kress buildings were so beautiful and sturdy, many were never torn down. Today, in cities like Savannah, El Paso, or Seattle, you can still see them. They might be museums or offices now, but the name Kress is still there, standing tall. A reminder of a time when even the cheapest items were sold with absolute respect for beauty. Does your town still have a Kress building standing today? Do you remember that feeling of awe when you first stepped into that grand space as a child? Leave a comment and tell us about the Kress in your memories. W.T. Grant, the tragedy of a slow empire. If you grew up in Massachusetts or anywhere in New England, there's a name that's surely etched in your mind from weekend shopping trips, W.T. Grant. In 1906, William Thomas Grant opened his first store in Lynn, Massachusetts. He didn't just sell goods, he sold a promise. The best value for the least money. And boy, did he deliver. Grant's store was an instant hit. By 1936, while many were still tightening their belts, Grant's revenue hit $100 million, an unthinkable number at the time. We can't talk about W.T. Grant without mentioning the Bradford House. It wasn't just a lunch counter, it was a real restaurant inside the store. With its pilgrim logo, Bradford House was the favorite stop for every family. Do you remember the fried chicken or those hot sandwiches? It was where parents rested after picking out fabrics or housewares while we played with our new toys. At its peak, W.T. Grant had over 1,000 stores nationwide. They seemed to have the world in their hands. But as they say, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. By the late 60s, the retail world was shifting violently. New names like Kmart and Walmart were taking over the best suburban spots. W.T. Grant made a fatal mistake. They were too slow to change. By the time they realized they needed bigger stores and started the Grant City chain, the best pieces of the pie had already been taken. In a desperate move, they did something unheard of. They started giving credit cards to almost anyone who walked in. Imagine, like in the 1970s, you could just sign your name and take goods home without proving your income. Grant hoped this would boost sales, but instead it created a mountain of unpayable bad debt. The company lost millions every year. Then in 1975, the shock came. W.T. Grant filed for bankruptcy. At the time, it was the second largest bankruptcy in U.S. history. Just a year later, in 1976, all 1,000 stores closed forever. The fall was so fast it left a huge hole on Main Street. Those pilgrim signs were taken down, and the Bradford House restaurants went silent. It wasn't just a brand vanishing. It was the first warning that an old era was fading before the power of modern retail giants. Even after 50 years for many of us, the image of those long aisles and the scent of the Bradford House remains a permanent part of our memories of an older America. Did your family ever have a W.T. Grant credit card? Or do you have a special memory of the Bradford House? Share it with us in the comments. And if you find these stories valuable, don't forget to share this video with friends from your generation. Ben Franklin Stores, where legends began. If any name reminds us of thrift and core American family values, it has to be Ben Franklin Stores. Named after founding father Benjamin Franklin and his famous motto, "A penny saved is a penny earned." The chain began in 1927. But unlike Woolworth's or McCrory's, which were owned by giant corporations, Ben Franklin used a very different model, franchising. What did this mean? It meant the Ben Franklin in your town was usually owned by a family in your own community. They knew your name. They knew what candy your kids liked. And that closeness made Ben Franklin an essential part of our childhoods. Do you remember those afternoons after school? Riding your bike to the Ben Franklin on the corner? It was a paradise of craft supplies, yarn for grandma, and especially the toy section, where you could stand for hours just staring at model kits or vinyl dolls. At its peak, there were 2,500 Ben Franklin stores across America. For many, it was the soul of the small town, the place where everyone met and shared daily news. But here's the most interesting part of Ben Franklin's history. It was the school for future retail giants. Can you believe it? Sam Walton, the founder of the Walmart empire, started his career by owning a Ben Franklin franchise in Newport, Arkansas in 1945. It was here that Sam learned his first lessons about discounting and serving everyday customers. Not just Sam Walton, but also Michael Dupay, the founder of the famous Michael's Craft Stores, started with a Ben Franklin. You could say Ben Franklin was the seed that grew into the face of modern retail. But fate is ironic. Those star students like Walmart later became too powerful, indirectly pushing their teacher into a corner. In the mid-90s, the parent company filed for bankruptcy. Those familiar red and white signs began to disappear. A company from Wisconsin tried to revive the brand in 1997, but they couldn't fight the tide of time and stopped in 2017. Luckily, the story isn't over. Today, a few Ben Franklin stores still exist in a few states, and Hawaii under Housemart. Though few remain, every time we see that name, we see a glimpse of a hardworking, thrifty America full of neighborly love. Do you remember the first time you walked into a Ben Franklin? What toy or craft kit did you buy? If you still have something bought from Ben Franklin decades ago, please share it with us. G.C. Murphy and TG&Y. While Woolworths and Kress built skyscrapers and art palaces, other names chose to stay close to the working class in rural America. This is where G.C. Murphy and TG&Y wrote their own stories. Let's start with G.C. Murphy. Born in 1906 in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, the heart of the steel industry. Although the founder died shortly after, two former McCrory executives turned 12 failing stores into a thriving empire. Do you remember stopping by G.C. Murphy after a long workday? Murphy didn't need flash. They focused on the essentials: durable clothes, tools, and hearty meals at the counter. The miracle was that G.C. Murphy stood strong, stayed debt-free, and remained profitable even during America's darkest economic times. They even tested giant stores called Murphy's Mart. They were as resilient as the Pennsylvania steelworkers themselves. But in 1985, they were swallowed by the merger craze and vanished under McCrory in 2002. And now, let's head west to Oklahoma in 1936 to meet a name that people often joked stood for toys, games, and yo-yos. That was TG&Y. But the truth is more interesting. The name came from the initials of three best friends: Rodden Tomlinson, Les Gosselin, and Raymond Young. If you grew up in the South or Southwest, TG&Y was childhood heaven. With the slogan, "Your Family Center," they served everyone from remote rural areas to growing cities. At their peak, they had over 1,000 stores. TG&Y was special because even after being sold to a big Chicago corporation, and a co-founder, Raymond Young, stayed to run it until he retired. That was true commitment to the community. However, in the 80s, TG&Y's attempt to become a modern department store hit too much competition. McCrory appeared once more to gather what was left. There's a tragic and ironic detail. The TG&Y name was officially erased in 2002. And strangely, that was the same year the last co-founder, Raymond Young, passed away. It was like a destined final period for a chapter of kindness and friendship in business. Did any of you ever misinterpret the name TG&Y as toys, games, and yo-yos like I did? Leave a comment so we can relive those beautiful memories. J.J. Newberry, the tough rival and the last lighthouse. If there was one name that truly made the Woolworths empire nervous, it was J.J. Newberry. We go back to 1911 in Pennsylvania, the cradle of American retail dreams. John Josiah Newberry, a man with a sharp eye and rare determination, opened his first store. Soon his brothers joined him, and together they built a chain synonymous with quality and trust. Do you remember Newberry's bright red sign with glowing gold letters? Walking in, you'd see an unusual level of neatness, and of course the soul of Newberry was the lunch counter. At Newberry's, the lunch counter served warm, home-cooked meals for workers, office staff, and hungry kids. Remember the smell of those patty melts or hot bowls of soup? The servers in their neat uniforms and smiles, they weren't just selling food, they were selling kindness in the middle of a busy city. By the 1950s, J.J. Newberry was a force with over 500 stores nationwide. They didn't fear giants like Woolworths. In fact, Newberry was famous for taking over smaller shops to expand. They were proof that a family business could become an empire by understanding every small need of the customer. But then, the destiny named McCrory appeared again. In 1972, J.J. Newberry was sold to the parent company of McCrory, and we all know where that script leads. To survive in a changing world, they tried a painful step, converting Newberry into a model called Dollar Zone. But loyal customers didn't find the soul of their old store in those dry discount aisles. The warmth was gone. The smiles of the lunch counter faded into the past. There is a touching truth. While every other chain fell, one J.J. Newberry in Portland, Oregon, stood strong like the last lighthouse of an old era. It stood there, holding onto the last memories of wooden floors and lunch counters. But in 2001, that lighthouse finally went out. The last Newberry in Portland closed forever, marking the end of a century-long empire. Looking at old photos of J.J. Newberry today, we don't just see a store. We see images of our parents, our own childhoods, and an America where every penny spent brought value and absolute respect. Did your parents ever take you to lunch at J.J. Newberry after church? Which dish do you remember most? Leave a comment so we can relive those sweet moments together. The era of the 5 and dime may have closed, but the memories of creaking floors and laughter at the lunch counter live on in our hearts. They were the soul of the community, holding the daily stories of an entire generation of Americans. Though the red signs have faded, the values of kindness and neighborliness they left behind will always be a part of us.
This led to Western Auto gradually losing market share, losing mass-market customers to big box stores, and losing automotive enthusiasts to more professional rivals. The gradual loss of the Wizard brand. The Wizard brand, Western Auto's private label for a range of products from household goods to tools and auto parts, also suffered the same fate as the parent company. During its heyday, Wizard offered reliable and affordable alternatives to major brands. However, as Western Auto began its decline and sharply refocused on its automotive roots, Wizard household products such as refrigerators, TVs, and lawnmowers were gradually eliminated. Sears and subsequently Advance Auto Parts, which were only interested in the auto parts segment, had no motivation to maintain this diverse line of household goods. Although some Wizard automotive items, particularly batteries and parts, were still sold for a short time after the Sears acquisition, the Wizard brand generally ceased to exist as it once did. It became a victim of the broader decline of Western Auto. Today, some durable Wizard products, especially gardening equipment and tools, can still be found in the used goods market, and they carry a certain nostalgic value for those who remember using them during Western Auto's prosperous years. Furthermore, the associate stores, which were independent franchises, also represent a notable part of the legacy. When Advance Auto Parts terminated the wholesale supply program in January 2004, many of these associate stores chose to continue operating independently, although they had to drop the Western Auto label and convert into local auto parts or hardware stores, seeking supply from other vendors. A few, such as the store in Whitesburg, still exist as a historical highlight, even though they are no longer officially associated with the Western Auto brand.
If these stories touched your heart, please hit and keep these old memories alive.